talk a bit about Valdosta. This is Valdosta. For those of you who don't know, we're in Valdosta, Georgia. This is where I was born. So when I come here, I'm always nervous. It's a very nervous place, this Valdosta, because Valdosta is so meaningful to me, and whenever I'm here, Serenity is one of the places I like to be. And I want to start my little discussion about men by saying that this city has an incredible history in terms of black people. In 1918, which was about the time my father was born, Mary Turner, how many of you have heard of Mary Turner? Okay, a few of you. Mary Turner was lynched here in Valdosta. She defended her husband, who had been wrongly killed and murdered. She defended him. She was lynched. Even though she was pregnant, her stomach was ripped open, and the baby was taken out, the fetus rather, and thrown on the ground and stomped to death right here in Valdosta, Georgia. I grew up in Valdosta, Georgia with that story. I know this place. I have been in many situations here. This is the place where, when I was 12 years old, as a shoe shine boy, I was spit on by my first customer at a barbershop, white barbershop downtown. My father, however, was a man. And when I came home and told him what had happened to me, because what happened was that as I was shining the shoes, the white customer spat on me, and then there was laughter throughout the barbershop. And I took my little box, packed up my stuff, left, and went home. That was my first and only shoe shine job. and his shoe was the only one I shined. I left, went home, told my father what had happened, and he said he was proud of me for having left the situation. I didn't take the quarter, and I didn't stay there to shine other shoes. I got out of there. And I've always been a person who felt that when you're in a situation where it is one that disrespects you and you are not respected, you have no reason to stand in that place. There's no reason to be there. And so I felt that his reaction, my father's reaction, was the reaction of a man who wanted to teach me a lesson. And he taught me many lessons, and those lessons are in my book. This book, As I Run Toward Africa, is actually my first memoir. It's a memoir, it's a remembrance of the things that happened to me as I saw them. Now, as I told my Aunt Georgia, some of the things she saw differently. But there are things in here that I'm sure my brother Paul will see differently. But this is what I saw when we were growing up. And this is in here, and many other things are in there. So, in search of the man, or in search of men. I want to first of all do a historical presentation, and then I want to see what qualities emerge out of the men that I look at historically, and then I want to see if we can just apply that, and then I'll be finished. I won't be long. I'm not a Baptist preacher. I'm not a Church of Christ preacher, so I won't be long. I'm a short-winded guy who just simply try to get directly to the point. So I'm not a preacher. I'm basically a person who wants to teach you something and then finish. The earliest man that we know about in history, that we really know something about his life, that we know something about what he did, other than his name. We know something more than his name. Something, we know something that he said, we know something that he built, we know something that he wrote. The earliest person we know is a black man. His name is Imhotep. I-M-H-O-T-E-P.
Yes, sir.
Imhotep. You may have never heard of him, but you should have.
Yes, sir.
The earliest man. Now, he's not the first man. There are men before him. There are people before him. There are women before him. But he's the first man that we know something about more than his name. Imhotep. The first multi-dimensional human being that we know about. That there's more to him than the fact that he lived. You know, sometimes you read about Methuselah. He lived so many years and he died. That's one dimension. But here, we're talking about somebody multi-dimensional that we know something about. Imhotep. The name Imhotep means he who comes in peace. And this man, the reason we know so much about him is because he was the builder of the first pyramid.
Yes.
He built the first pyramid. This pyramid, the Saqqara pyramid in Egypt, which is in Africa, was built 2,800 years before Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
2,800 years before Jesus Christ, a black man builds a pyramid.
Yes, sir.
This pyramid was built 3,400 years before Muhammad started Islam. 3,400 years before Islam, a black man, Imhotep, built the first pyramid. The first multidimensional human being. He was not only an architect and a builder, and I've been to his pyramid. It still stands today. The temple that goes with it still stands. Not only did he build the first pyramid out of stone, he also was the first physician in the world, first doctor. He diagnosed diseases and he gave remedies for different illnesses. But he didn't only do that. He was also the vizier of King Joseph. He ruled as a prime minister of Egypt. And not only that, when he died, Imhotep was the first human being that had lived, walked among other human beings, and died, and then they built a temple to worship him. First person to be worshipped was a black man, Imhotep. As a human being, there were gods that had been worshipped. Amen and Ra and Atum and Ptah. But the first human being that was deified, made a deity, even though he had been an ordinary human being, he was made a deity, he was elevated among other humans, was a man, a black man, Imhotep. Years after he died, they built temples to him. And the Greeks even worshipped him. Not just the Africans, the Greeks worshipped him. They called him Asclepius, the father, the god of medicine. See, all the healing traditions relate back,
yes, sir,
to Imhotep. Imhotep was a man. We're gonna try to distill some of the qualities of some of these men. Another man that I want to just bring your attention to is Tutmosis III.
yes, sir.
lifetime the greatest conquering king of all times. There is no other king in history up until this time, who we can say was greater than Tutmosis III. Now, people tell you, you hear things like Alexander the Great, but Alexander the Great was nothing compared to Tutmosis III. Tutmosis III was the greatest conquering king of all times. Let me just tell you this, because again, we don't know our own history. That's our problem. That's right. That's a problem of our history.
Yes, sir.
Tutmosis III was the king of the 18th dynasty, the greatest dynasty in all of history. That a dynasty is a family of kings. The greatest family of kings in all of history was the 18th dynasty. And they ruled in Egypt around 1400 years before Christ. This great family of kings and queens, including Hatshepsut, Amenhotep the first and the second and the third and the fourth, who became Akhenaten. They all ruled. This is the time of Tutankhamun. They all ruled. But before King Tutankhamun was Thutmose III. Thutmose III led 17 military campaigns all the way from Nubia in the south of Egypt, all the way to Syria. 17 times he led his soldiers into battle, and he won. It's not like today when Obama can sit in Washington and they can have drones flying over Pakistan or Afghanistan and dropping bombs. You don't even see the people you drop the bombs on. No, it's not like that. In the old days, the king had to himself get up and go to war. And when you got up and went to war, you fought. And then if you didn't die, you came back and you lived to fight another day and another war. He did it 17 times. No record in history like that. Actually battling 17 major campaigns and winning. He was the greatest conquering king of his era. Tutmosis III. Don't forget it. Let me quickly go to Ramses II. Ramses II, the greatest builder in the history of the ancient world. Built more temples, built more monuments than more cities, but he ruled for 66 years. This was the magnificent king. Ramses the Great, Ramses II, married to Nefertari, the most beautiful woman of them all. First time a man ever built a temple for a woman was when a black man, Ramses II, built a temple for Nefertari, a black woman. It wasn't a Taj Mahal. Come on. No, it was a black man building a temple in praise and in honor of his wife, Nefertari, at Abu Simbel. That's the first time. That's like 1,300 years before Jesus. He builds this temple on the side of a mountain. And you can go there and you can see this temple to Nefertari. It's several thousand years. It's at least 2,000, 2,500 years later before we get the Taj Mahal. This is the first time. This is a historical moment. No, we have no record of a man building a temple to a woman before. That's the love he had for Nefertari. Ramses II. Let's look at Abu Bakr II. Abu Bakr II. Abu Bakr II, a man in 1312, he did something that was remarkable. In 1311, he sent 1,000 boats, fishing boats, across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1311, just sit them. See, I want to see what's on the other side of the ocean. This is a black man sitting in West Africa as king of a major empire, the Mali Empire. He said, I want to know what's on the other side of the ocean. And the fishermen always go out, and you can see that even today when you go to West Africa. Some of the areas where you have the greatest long distance deep sea fishermen fishing with long boats, you see it in West Africa. The Senegalese and the Ghanaians. You go to each coast and you can look and see them way out on the horizon. They go for 2 and 3 days, way out into the ocean. Well, the king said, I don't want you to go for 2 and 3 days. I want you to go until you find what's on the other side. 1,000 long boats were sent to the other side. One came back and reported to the king that I was with them, but all of a sudden, and his boat, like their boats, had 20 or 30 people in them. He said, all of a sudden, as we were rowing out, I saw the other boats, long boats, go quickly as if they were taken by a giant river. And I got frightened and I turned back. And he came back to shore. So the king said, well, I want to go myself and see about this river in the ocean, this current that takes these boats so quickly. He went back to his capital and he did something that was amazing. He resigned the kingship. He was an emperor, a very powerful emperor, controlled a large territory of land. He resigned it and he said, you know what? I want to go and see what's on the other side myself. So he gave up his throne to his brother. He gave his throne to his brother, who became known as Mansa Musa. But Abu Bakr II said, I want to go and see what's over there. And he took another 1,000 ships, long boats, and went across the Atlantic. He was a black man. He was a man, Abu Bakr. I want to tell you a little bit about Okonkwo Anochi. A-N-O-K-Y-O. Okonkwo Anochi. Okonkwo Anochi was a priest. An incredible priest around the 16th century in Ghana. Did many things. Things that still stand today. There's a sword in the ground in Ghana, in the city called Kumasi, that's stuck into the earth, that cannot be pulled out. Even when Muhammad Ali was in his prime, he tried to pull it out, couldn't pull it out. It was put there by Okonkwo Anochi. One of the great priests of all times, one of the great urbanists, one of the great legal scholars, wrote the laws, many of the Asante laws of the Asante ethnic group and nation. This is a great priest. Was able to declare who should be king by watching nature and by commanding. You may have heard of something called the golden stool of Ghana. Well, the golden stool was created by Okonkwo Anochi. What a great wise people. Wiser than anybody knew anywhere else. And he had grown up as a young man watching the court scenes and the actions and the rituals and the ceremonies. And he became so powerful that he was able even to command a stream to move in another direction. Now don't look at me funny. I know we're in church. But y'all believe Jesus walked on water. Well, black man can do things too. Don't get so upset. Don't get strange down me. I'm just telling you what's part of the record. This is part of your record too. That Okonkwo Anochi had the great skill to bury seeds in the earth, and then to have those seeds spring up the next day into plants. Ours. So come for a black man. Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey. Born in Jamaica. In 1903, 1906,